Or Mapleglen Center.
Care Center, yes.
Welcome to 1 Million Cups.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Amy Manganelli. About 6 years ago, my husband came home and said he wanted to start a business. He said, before you say yes or no, you should know a few things. Number one, there is no how-to manual because no business like this exists in Illinois. Number two, traditional venues to advertise will be unavailable to us. Social media will be out as well. We will be lucky to get and keep a bank account. And if all of that doesn't excite you, the business is federally illegal. So, gosh, where do I sign? He had me at no bank account. Nonetheless, we pressed on. And in December of 2015, Mapleglen Care Center opened as the first medical cannabis dispensary in Rockford and the 10th to open in Illinois. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Mapleglen and its Chief Problem Solver. So when Cassie asked me to speak today, she said, talk about some of the problems that you've faced. So there have been so many, I tried to break it into just a couple of categories for you today. The first was a location. Where do you put a medical cannabis dispensary? Does the local, children's store want to be next to a cannabis dispensary? Probably not. So we went out to Colorado and we looked at urban dispensaries, suburban dispensaries, industrial dispensaries, and I came away feeling the most comfortable in the industrial space. So we found a location in the Stenstrom Industrial Park off of Sandy Hollow and Alpine, and purchased a building that would allow us the space to grow and the privacy that I thought our patients would want. The second issue is the employee. And this was really the first time I looked to the other licensees in Illinois for some guidance. And I saw dispensaries having press conferences in white lab coats, touting the fact that their staff would be anchored by pharmacy techs. And so I thought, did they learn anything about cannabis in pharmacy school? I called a number of pharmacy schools. I looked at their itinerary. I talked to pharmacists, and they don't. So I thought, well, why am I looking for pharmacy techs? And what I really need is a staff that's well-versed in cannabis. But my desk was not flooded with resumes that listed experienced cannabis user under experience. Fortunately, they found me. And today I have the same staff that I started with in December of 2015, although it's grown quite a bit. And they have the unique ability to understand the plant, understand the products grown and produced in Illinois, and the ability to care for patients, which is ultimately what we do every day. The other issue that we faced that I didn't expect on a local level was the media. I have been constantly amazed at how they have gotten the facts wrong. They would call, early on, they'd call and ask to interview me, and I would happily comply, and I'd leave the interview thinking, they got it. They really understood what I'm saying. And then I'd turn the news on at 6 o'clock and see a story that didn't even remotely represent what I was trying to say, followed by images of glass jars full of marijuana loose and videos of 12-year-olds going into Skateland. And I'd call them and say, it's not factual. The salacious Images are inappropriate and wrong, and we're putting a message out there that does the community no service. The fact is, a cannabis dispensary in the state of Illinois is a conduit between the cultivator who grows, produces, processes, packages, and labels marijuana and the patient. It comes into us in tamper-proof packages, all sealed, labeled. It leaves us the same way. It is not opened on site. It is not used on site. That's the way it was in 2015. That's the way it will be in 2020. I won't go further than that. So when it came time for opening day to come, and the press called and said, can we come and be at the dispensary for opening day? I said no. While I understood it would hurt us in the long run, the idea that they would come and show patients coming in, patients who may not have told their families, their friends, their neighbors, their employers, that they were going to use medical cannabis for symptom relief was simply unacceptable. And I didn't trust them to accurately portray the story. So while it has hurt us as far as the exposure goes, I can live with myself. The final issue that we have faced, and the most disappointing, has been the medical community here in Rockford. We chose Rockford because of its thriving business community and its regional medical center that we truly believed was progressive. The hospitals have decided and maintained this decision that they will not allow their doctors to certify. Some of them hold their medical malpractice insurance kind of as hostage. We're not going to provide you with any hospital-subsidized malpractice should you certify patients. Well, if I was a doctor, I wouldn't put that at risk either. So they don't certify patients. Where do these patients go? They go to, if they're lucky, they go towards Chicago and some of the larger multi-specialty groups or larger university hospitals in Chicago that do have a little more progressive medicine and do have doctors who are able to be doctors. If they're unlucky, they go to a handful of really low-level physicians that you probably wouldn't want your cat to be seen by. And that's what happens when an administration decides how their doctors are going to practice. We've never said that medical cannabis is right for every patient, but doctors should be allowed to be doctors. So we'll get notes on an almost daily basis. Doctors will write notes on the certifying application saying, this is completely right for my patient, but the hospital will not allow me to certify, will not allow me to sign this document. I'm sorry. A few weeks ago, we got a call from the head of the pharmacy department at Swedes, who said he wanted to come in, he wanted to see the dispensary. He wanted to talk about how maybe we could move forward together. And I thought, well, this is a step in the right direction. And he came in, and his first question to me was, so do you really think that you're part of the healthcare community? And I answered him politely, even though I wanted to show him the door. I answered him politely, but ultimately, it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what he thinks. It doesn't matter what anybody in this room thinks. The state of Illinois has decided we are part of the healthcare community. So we have to find a way to work together for the benefit of the patients, so that there's a continuity of care for patients. They don't go elsewhere. They stay with their doctor. And, so those really have been our biggest issues. going forward. And going forward, some of them will be, some will be better, some will get worse. Every day is a challenge, but ultimately, we've had more good days than bad days, more laughter than tears, more happiness than frustration. And it's been an exciting experience for me and for my staff at Mapleglen. I am happy to answer any questions you might have. Yes.
How have you solved the banking issues?
Oh, well, we have gone to, we've had bank accounts, we've lost bank accounts. We get a bank account, we lose it. The biggest hit, we were part of the 95% of the industry last spring that was a customer of the Bank of Springfield. And when they closed their cannabis division down, we were one of the people left loose. So I've been to every bank in town. I've tried. We have solved it. We do have banking. It's not local, which is a shame, but it was critical that I find some kind of solution because I can't pay people in loose dollars. That's not safe. It's ridiculous. Ultimately, the cannabis business community is extremely compliant. We have to be. We've spent a lot of time and money and effort getting ourselves to this point, and nobody is going to risk it by sloppy paperwork or, not showing where every dollar comes from or goes. I'm hoping in the next year or so things loosen up for everybody. I'd love to be able to pay all of my vendors with a check, but currently that's, not everybody has an account. So it's an ongoing issue.
What businesses were you and your husband in before that fateful day when he came in and proposed this adventure?
My husband is a physician and was doing a lot of, he does pain medicine for DuPage Medical Group. He is a very traditionally trained physician at Georgetown University and then at Northwestern, and was seeing a lot of end-of-life patients. And probably, maybe it was 8 years ago now, the policy for DuPage Medical Group was if you fail a drug test, if THC shows up in your system, you're out. They're kicking you out of the clinic. And Paul was struggling with the idea that he was kicking out a 50-year-old who was dying of cancer, who was using some cannabis to help him get through chemo. He said, I'm struggling with the idea that this is the policy. So he kind of put himself through marijuana school, for lack of a better word, just educating himself on the plant and what it really could do for his patients. And ultimately, DuPage Medical Group changed their policy. And Paul said if it ever comes to Illinois, we will be a part of it. So we chose Rockford because it was going to be out of his catchment area. There can be no relationship between a dispensary and a physician. So Paul doesn't see any of our patients, and there's no relationship between the two. And my role, I was happily at home raising our 3 kids. We have a 26-year-old, a 24-year-old, and a almost 20-year-old. And I had a fairly happy life until he came home and dropped this in my lap. So Yes.
I thought there was pending legislation to resolve a lot of this in the state.
Well, even if they resolve this in the state, there's still the federal issues. And so the state can say, I mean, we are a legal running business in the state of Illinois, but it is federally illegal. So the minute we cross the line into Indiana, Wisconsin, Iowa, we've broken the law, which cuts down on the ability to advertise. I mean, you can't advertise on a station that, you can't go to ABC and say, I want to pay for a commercial as it crosses state lines. So even if the state does fix some of the, does regulate it further, unless it's no longer federally illegal, we'll still face problems. And the hospitals in Rockford, that's their excuse. It's federally illegal, so we won't allow our doctors to be doctors.
Could you help us understand the certification piece? So when you say a doctor won't certify, who's supposed to be certified, and why is that important?
In order for a patient to get to our doorstep, they have to be diagnosed with one of the 41 qualifying conditions. And a doctor has to certify that they have diagnosed them with one of these conditions. The doctor does not recommend medical cannabis. They are simply filling out a form that says, I, Dr. John Doe, have seen Jane Smith, and she does indeed have cancer. That's it.
Okay.
The other component, which became active at the end of January of 2019, is the opioid alternative. And so doctors can, if a patient has a condition for which an opiate is generally written for, they can certify them for an opiate, for this opiate program, and they can get a card to try medical cannabis for 90 days instead of
Opioids.
opioids. So there are a couple of avenues now, but they all kind of begin with the doctor helping the patient out.
And they don't want to fill out this specific form because it's cannabis related versus another form or something like
Right.
that. Okay.
That's right. It's totally fine
Yeah.
if they are, writing scripts for all kinds of
Yeah.
things that patients are dying from in
Right.
far greater numbers than marijuana. But for the cannabis, they have fallen on their swords, at least here in Rockford, that this is a non-starter. They don't like it. They don't want to be a part of it. And so ultimately, who's punished is the patient.
And I'm sorry, I keep asking questions. What's the interaction with insurance?
Well, for most doctors, insurance covers your visit to the doctor. Now, some of these doctors, some of these a little more questionable physicians are a cash only.
Okay, gotcha.
Now, when they come into the dispensary, we are cash only.
Okay, right.
So there is no
Yep.
insurance, there's
Reimbursements
sadly
and stuff like
nothing.
that. Okay.
Are you getting positive results from the patients as far as
Yes.
positive testimonies? So
Positive
it's working?
testimonies, and we have one patient, and maybe this started about 2 years ago, who's being followed by Mayo Clinic, and he's their first cannabis patient. So he comes in, he gets his product, he takes all the corresponding labs for the products that he uses, and they head right up to Rochester. And so, my feeling has been if Mayo Clinic's on board, can't Swedes be? But anyway.
Anybody else?
Any more questions? We got one in front. Wait for the catch box so we can hear you.
Are there any issues with your own your own insurance, such as building insurance and things like that, because your business is associated with?
Oh, for our own, like, property insurance,
Yeah,
liability
yeah.
insurance? Well, no. There are insurance companies that now insure cannabis businesses. So we openly have a relationship with insurance companies that allow us to
Okay.
be insured.
Awesome. Well, let's give her a hand for her presentation.
Thank you.
We do have a question for you. What can the 1 Million Cups family do for you?
Well, I think ultimately you can understand our role, and you can pass it on. You can communicate really what the dispensary is doing in Rockford. That we're not here passing out joints to 15-year-olds. We really are simply a conduit between the grower and the patient.
Awesome. Well, we do present every presenter. I gotta find a new way to say that. Every week I say present the presenter. Dun, 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 with this 1 Million Cups coffee mug.
Thank you very much.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it is.
Well, thanks so much for sharing with us.
Thank you all very much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Very informative. Thank you so much, Amy. In case you thought this was the first time laws had changed, I just want to give you some laws that maybe you didn't know were on the books that actually changed, maybe even recently. So let's see here. The California Home Food Law was put in place in 2013. That allows somebody to make food, let's say cookies, in your home and then sell them. And as long as you sell under $45,000 a year, which is a lot of cookies, it's now legal, as of only a handful of years ago, for you to make cookies at home and sell them. Who knew? Also, in 1972, it became finally legal to sell cold beer in Mississippi. Prior to then, it had to be room temperature. I don't know why. Also, pinball was banned in New York in 1942 because it was determined that it was a game of chance rather than a game of skill. About 30 years later, someone finally realized that it's probably skill. If you've ever played pinball, it has a lot more to do with skill than luck. That was repealed in 1974, only after the state had confiscated 2,000 pinball machines. And then, until 1931, Pennsylvania had outlawed sports, including football, on Sundays, except baseball. Don't know why. Better lobbyists, yes. In fact, lobbying was at one point in time illegal, which we can argue whether that should be legal or not legal on a different show. But thank you again, Amy, for talking about medical cannabis. We do want to inform you that next week, remember, where is 1 Million Cups going to be next week? Rockford Roasting Company. That's true. Not here. What else do I need to tell people? Am I forgetting anything? I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Remember your events. The sign on the door. I will put a sign on the door. Remember, if you're interested in any of the events that are coming up, look on the broadcast, right? And again, congratulations on your election to the board. Also, thanks for what you did for Salsa Business Network. A group of people meeting for last 13 years. No joke. And they were a good group of people too. So we're happy to have you here. This is your fine Wednesday. And it's a little bit rainy, but it's going to clear up. So go be a friendly person to your neighbor. Enjoy your coffee, courtesy of Kurt Berry from Stillwater Financial and Bob Ewald from Fresh Horizons Coffee Company. Thanks for joining us today.